Welcome to this meeting of Council. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of this recording. Indigo Shire Council acknowledges the original custodians of these lands. The people of the rivers and the hills have walked these lands for thousands of years, as well as today, and we pay respect to the elders of the past and present. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Apologies and leaves of absence. In accordance with Council's Governance Rule 26, Councillor Horn has made a request in writing to the CEO to attend this meeting via electronic means due to health reasons. Upon approval by Council, Councillor Horn will be admitted to the meeting. So I have a recommendation that I'd like someone to move that Council approve Councillor Horn's attendance by electronic means in accordance with Governance Rule 26F. Councillor Harvey, you'd like to move that? Seconded by Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillor Horn, you're now part of the meeting.
Thank you.
Item 4 is declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest with the meeting tonight? None. Item 5 is open forum. CEO, do we have any open forum questions tonight?
Nil, Mayor Price.
Thank you. Item 6 is community and council achievements. Councillor Landells, would you like to recognise the first community and council achievement for National Volunteers Week?
Yes, thank you. National Volunteers Week 2026 is an annual celebration in recognition of the millions of people across our country who give their time and talents to make our communities better. It's not only a week to thank and showcase those who already give their time, but an invitation to others to make 2026 a year of meaningful involvement in ways that work for them. Indigo Shire has a long and proud history of volunteerism. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank those who volunteer across our organisation and to the many who volunteer in our communities to make them stronger and vibrant. To mark the occasion, a community event is being held in Beechworth at Quercus on Friday 22nd of May from 6 to 8 p.m. It will include a panel discussion and Q&A followed by dinner and networking. For more information or to register, you can head along to Council's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landells. We'd also like to mark International Nurses Day. So recently we've recognised both International Day of the Midwife on May the 5th and International Nurses Day on May the 12th, 2026. Following which I wanted to take a moment at tonight's council meeting to celebrate and recognise the skill and compassion that our nurses and midwives bring to communities across the world. This year's theme, Our Nurses, Our Future, Empowered Nurses Save Lives, speaks to the essential role nurses and midwives play in improving health and social outcomes for women, babies and families. Indigo Shire Council is incredibly proud and grateful for our very own nurses and midwives. Indigo Shire Council has maternal and child health centres in Rutherglen, Chiltern, Beechworth, Yakandanda and Tangambalanga, and also provides in-home support through outreach services. Our nurses and midwives support Indigo Shire Council families from firstborn visits right through to early childhood milestones, offering parents and children reassurance, guidance, care and compassion when it matters most. Thank you to our nurses and midwives for their ongoing commitment to high quality care and support for families in our communities. Did any other councillor have a community or council achievement that they wanted to raise with the meeting tonight? Item 7 is condolences. Do we have any condolences with the meeting tonight, for the meeting tonight? No. Item 8 is confirmation of minutes from the previous meetings. The recommendation is that the following minutes be confirmed. 1. Minutes of the council meeting held on the 28th of April 2026 as published on Council's website. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved, Councillor Dowsley, seconded Councillor Burke. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak to the motion? No?
No, thank you.
Councillor Burke, would you like to speak as seconder? No? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 9 is business arising from previous minutes, and CEO, there's none.
Bill Mayor Price.
Similarly, CEO with item 10 petitions.
No petitions, Mayor Price.
Item 11 is planning and corporate services. Item 11.1 is the council plan 2025 to 2029 year 2 update. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 endorses the council plan 2025 to 2029 year 2 update, and 2 places it on public exhibition for a period of 21 days from Wednesday the 20th of May to close of business Tuesday the 9th of June 2026. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Landells. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as the mover?
So the council plan was adopted by council in June 2025, and we're now up to the 2-year break. And it's going out really to support the budget, so that it's one of the budget documents. So as people, community members are looking through the budget, they can also look through the council plan and just ensure that both of them are on the same page. We're working towards the same things. Of course, the council plan is what gives us the plan for the budget. So hopefully they are very aligned. We've gone through it, staff have gone through it, and see that there's no changes to be made. But of course, it's going out for community review. If you feel that there is some change that needs to be recommended, then please, whilst you're looking at the budget, look at the council plan. That'd be a great 2 documents to review.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Landells, did you want to speak as seconder?
No, thanks.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Horn, did you raise your hand? Carried unanimously. Item 11.2 is the 2026-27 draft budget. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 notes that A, the draft 2026-27 budget complies with the 2.75% cap rate increase as set by the Victorian State Government. B, the attached draft budget contains the following allocations: 13.046 million of capital works, including 3.26 million for road maintenance and upgrade, 1.655 million for caravan park upgrades as part of the caravan park master plan. 3, $250,000 for bridge renewal. 4, 164,000 for footpath and cycleways, including the construction of a footpath from Isaacs Avenue to Railway Avenue in Yakandanda. 5, 350,000 for drainage renewal and upgrade. 6, several community facility projects. A, the Old Chiltern Library, 60,000. B, the Rutherglen Maternal Health upgrade, 60,000. C, the Tangambalanga Tennis Court upgrade, 50,000. D, the Barclay Park Pavilion upgrade, 350,000 additional to bring the total project to 1.4 million. E, Chiltern Recreation Reserve lighting upgrade, 327,000. F, the Kiwi cricket nets and oval irrigation, 20,000. And then 50,000 for a community infrastructure needs assessment, 50,000 for continued work to protect the Burke Museum collection, 25,000 to support the Community Asset Committee governance, 15,000 to implement an AI tool to support planning applications. And C, due to the increased fuel pricing, curbside waste and recycling fees have been increased to reflect the projected additional contract cost. 2, endorses the attached documents for public exhibition. A, the draft budget, including 1-year capital plan. B, the draft 10-year financial plan. C, the draft revenue and rating plan. D, the draft operating income and expense by service. E, the draft capital works commentary 1 year. F, the draft 4-year capital works plan authorises the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice of the preparation of the draft budget. 3, places the endorsed documents on public exhibition for a period of 21 days from Wednesday the 20th of May to the close of business Tuesday the 9th of June. 4, invites any person wishing to provide feedback on the exhibited documents to do so prior to 5 p.m. the 9th of June 2026. 5, considers the community feedback along with any recommended budget changes arising from the feedback at the June meeting of Council on the 30th of June 2026. 6, considers the updated 2026-27 budget at the June meeting of Council on the 30th of June 2026. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think the main point that came out of this over the very long time that we spent doing the budget is that it really is not an easy budget. And I think that that's something that we need to say and be very open about it. There are parts of this budget that I do not agree with, and there are projects and services that I know many in the community would like to see funded sooner or at a higher level. However, overall, I will be supporting this draft budget because I believe it reflects the financial reality facing this council and all regional councils across Victoria, and it maintains a responsible focus on core services and infrastructure. This budget has been prepared under a 2.75 rate cap. And so therefore our income can increase no more in total than 2.75. And this is at a time when councils are facing significantly higher real world cost increases. Rising fuel costs, construction costs, insurance pressures and reduced grant support are all creating genuine challenges for local government. Despite that, this budget still delivers more than $13 million in capital works, including over $3 million for road maintenance and upgrades. And I know everyone that I speak to talks about the road maintenance and upgrades as a real high priority, and that has been maintained. And there's also bridge renewal, drainage works, footpaths, community facilities and recreation infrastructure. I particularly welcome the 6 major community projects, the Old Chiltern Library, the Tangambalanga Tennis Court upgrade, a large investment in the Barclay Park Pavilion, a small investment in the Kiwa cricket nets, and there's a lot of projects across the Shire. There's irrigation works, community facility improvements, and continued investment in road and drainage infrastructure. I also support the stronger focus this year on project readiness and realistic delivery capacity. Too often in budgets, we see large capital programs announced that cannot realistically be delivered within the financial year. And we've had a big discussion around the council in the preparation of the budget on this. So I think the additional scrutiny around carry forwards and delivery risk makes this capital works program more realistic. There are still important conversations ahead around long-term financial sustainability, renewing ageing assets and balancing community expectations with what councils can realistically afford to deliver. However, I believe this draft budget represents a practical, balanced and, most importantly, a financially responsible starting point for that broader community discussion. I encourage residents to read these documents. They're thick documents, they're detailed documents, but there's executive summaries, and I also want you to provide feedback and be part of the discussion. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor. Who else would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dowsley.
I'm going to talk really fast because since I've only got 3 minutes. I hope to achieve greater accountability in our local government, ensuring that funds are used efficiently and that strategic plans translate into meaningful actions. That was a direct statement, or some may say a promise, I made to voters in the 2024 election. I take those words very seriously. Accountability, transparency, strategic. That's why I've spent many hours reviewing this draft budget, analysing, comparing, questioning and interrogating. And having completed this review, I cannot support this draft budget in its current form. Firstly, borrowings. This budget asks ratepayers to accept additional borrowings of $3 million over the next 3 years. There is absolutely a role for borrowings for strategic generational projects with a strong business case, and I've endorsed borrowings for caravan park redevelopments when that business case is justified. However, borrowing money to fund a standard capital works program that should be covered by rates revenue is dangerous territory. Not only does it erode capacity in future years, but it undermines the financial stability of council, cost shifting to future years, future ratepayers, future councils. Secondly, deliverability. I've analysed the last 5 financial years of capital expenditure. 21-22 budget 16.5 million, delivered 11.6. 22-23 budget 19.5, delivered 12.9. 23-24 budget 19.9, delivered 11.7. 24-25 budget 18.3, delivered 13.7. Current financial year 25-26 budget 15.9, looking likely to deliver around 7 million, or 45% of what we said we would. The draft budget we are considering tonight proposes a capital works program of approximately 17.6 million when including carry forwards. Given our history, 17.6 million is unrealistic and undeliverable. We're not being transparent with the community about what we can deliver with our level of resources. Thirdly, strategic imbalance and equity. One thing that council does very well is strategic documents, policies and master plans. What we don't do so well is ensuring these expensive documents inform investment decisions. When I talk to the community, I hear the same thing again and again. Perceived inequity in capital investment between different townships and communities. I only have to mention place plans, tourism investment, or recreation infrastructure to elicit a response when it comes to equity. If our strategic documents genuinely guide investment decisions, then there should be a much clearer and more transparent connection between adopted strategic priorities and the projects funded within this budget. At present, I am not satisfied that connection has been clearly demonstrated. I cannot support this draft budget for the 3 main reasons outlined above. Should this motion lapse, I foreshadow an alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsey. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn. Councillor Horn, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. As we place this draft budget out for public exhibition, I think the most important question we need to ask ourselves is this: are the things our communities are asking for genuinely aligning with the priorities and spending decisions they are being presented with? Across the Shire, people consistently raise concerns about roads, drainage, footpaths, safety, accessibility, housing pressures, and ageing infrastructure. People are asking for practical outcomes that improve everyday life and strengthen community well-being. For me, strong communities are built first on the fundamentals: safety, shelter, infrastructure, connection, and livability. That is why I believe we need to continually test our plans, our advocacy, and our spending decisions against the real and immediate needs of our communities. Are our advocacy asks truly reflecting what communities need now? Or are we simply responding to what funding happens to be available? And are we achieving the right balance between aspirational projects and broader whole of community benefit? because I do think communities find it difficult to understand how we can contemplate significant spending on tourism enhancements and embellishment projects while people are damaging vehicles on deteriorating roads and in some cases struggling to access secure housing. That is not an argument against tourism or progress. It's a question of balance, priorities, and making sure we remain focused on the foundational needs that underpin strong and sustainable communities. Every major spending decision also represents a choice about what we are not funding. And finally, I strongly encourage community members to read the draft budget, engage with the public exhibition process, and speak up, because the decisions we make today will shape our communities for many years to come. We must get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Landels?
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate that the draft budget's been through a rigorous internal process. It is also, that process includes picking up priorities from various council plans and strategies, and those strategies and plans were, when they were developed, they also had extensive community input at that time. Notwithstanding that, community can submit fresh ideas and feedback on the draft budget for things they would like to see. The current draft, as I look at it, I think has a reasonable spread of projects right across the Shire and for a lot of the communities, but I do note the constraints that were alluded to by other councillors, in particular Councillor Burke, but a highly constrained rate cap environment that we're in, and there are very limited funds to fund some of the things we'd like to see. Personally, I'd like to see a lot more new footpaths to be able to connect residential areas to key facilities in a lot of the towns, and there just simply isn't the funding available for new footpaths in a lot of towns, and it seems to be there's only really enough funding to do about one footpath right across the Shire, one new footpath of a few hundred metres each year. So, funding streams and programs for those sort of projects are quite difficult, and we are in a constrained environment. But having said that, I do believe it's been through a pretty thorough process, and I would encourage the community to put their thinking cap on, and if you think that there's a particular path you'd like to see or project in your community, by all means make a submission.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Price. I'd just like to support Councillor Burke and Councillor Landels. Look, it was a very difficult process. We did spend a lot of time on it, and we must emphasize to the community, be aware that money is very tight. It's not only tight in our council, the cost of living in the entire country. And we had to make some hard decisions, and no matter what we decided, some people won't be happy. I think it's, we've done the very best with the resources that we have and tried to spread it over all the different areas that the community wants us to look after. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I suppose a few things that I'd like to say to the community. In terms of the process, I think that the process takes the right form, which is that the organisation is to present us with what can begin to be a draft budget, and then it's up to this group of councillors to engage with the preparation of that document over a number of sessions, looking at all of the different inputs. It's very very much made known to us that this is to be our draft budget throughout this preparation that we will then present to the community. And so we are to test every component of it, every input, and understand them. I think that, as you can see by the debate tonight, we all have different interpretations of what that could and should look like. And I think that the tighter a budget gets, the more variance you'll see amongst councillors, and that's appropriate. That's a democracy. So I think we really welcome that. I note the MAV response to the state government budget, and similarly the Rural Council's Victoria response to the state government budget, noting that their taxation has increased by about 10% year on year, while ours is continuing to be rate capped. And we talk about the rate cap each time because it does really signify the gap between CPI and the rate cap, which has been really present over the last few years. So while each budget development that I've been a part of in the 10 years that I've been here has been really difficult, this one has definitely been the most difficult. And I think that the community could come back to us with a number of suggestions of different ways that this budget could be drafted, and they could all be very good suggestions, because the reality is we can only achieve so many priorities. We have a hell of a lot of priorities, and we also have to undoubtedly match them up with state and federal funding. And so sometimes that changes that priority listing because we are so heavily grant dependent that our priorities do have to align with other forms of government to fund things. So now is the time where we turn it over to you, the community, to say, this is what we've arrived at. This is the draft budget. The final budget will be presented at the June meeting. We welcome your engagement, not just with the projects, but with the position that we're in. And we really welcome that feedback for consideration, because as you can hear, we've all got a range of views about how this process could and should take place, and we'll continue to test that amongst ourselves. So I look forward to the community's feedback. Councillor Shepherd, you reserved your right.
I did. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the finance team and Mel communications, community engagement and communications, in terms of the amount of work that's gone into firstly gathering the community input around the budget, and the staff have bent over backwards really to ensure any questions we had, every briefing slot after every workshop, we had the opportunity to ask more questions and interrogate this budget, which I think we have done. It's a very difficult budget, I think, as many people have said, because although it maintains a low risk, there are clear signs in this budget that we're under really increasing pressure, and it's quite serious pressure. In the community feedback, they've been very clear about their priorities. They want roads, emergency management resilience, and maintaining existing infrastructure. And I think we're delivering that. That's absolutely what we are delivering. When we look at the capital program, around 9 million is direct towards core infrastructure, such as roads, drainage, bridges and footpaths, largely maintenance and renewal. There's also 4.7 million in upgrades to existing assets. There's 2.7 million in plant and equipment replacement, and there's 1.5 million in buildings and property works. Only around $800,000 relates to new infrastructure, which is sad for me, I always think. I love the idea of us working with the community around making new things and being innovative, but really with this tightness of budget, to deliver what the community are asking for, this is how we have to respond, and most of it is being spent on infrastructure and maintenance. Around Councillor Dowsley concern around the capital budget, I would just like to thank her for the work that she did previously at a previous council meeting, where she really pushed us to discuss whether we were really properly looking at project readiness, rephasing projects across the years, and acknowledging delivery risk. And I really do think this budget is doing that. Yep. 30 seconds, okay. So I understand her concerns. I think if we're going to cut this capital budget, where are we going to cut it? When I've just explained that most of that is being spent on renewals and maintenance. So I understand your concerns, but I wouldn't be the person, I wouldn't know where to cut this capital budget.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Burke, would you like to sum up?
No, thanks.
Okay, councillors, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? So the motion is passed 5-2 with councillors Harvey, Price, Shepherd, Burke, Landells voting for the motion, councillor Horn and councillor Dowsley voting against. We move now to item 11.3, the finance report for April 2026. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the April 2026 finance report. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved councillor Shepherd, seconded councillor Burke. Councillor Shepherd.
So council is reporting a favourable year-to-date variance of 136,000 compared to the adopted QT forecast. The result is primarily driven by higher operating grants and lower expenditure in materials and consumables. As noted in the report, these variances are largely timing related and are expected to reduce in the remaining months of the financial year. Capital works expenditure is currently at 67.2% of the forecast, indicating that a portion of the program may extend into the next financial year. Total borrowing stands at 1.52 million and the cash balance is 6.1 million, reflecting the timing of grant funding and capital works delivery. From an overall perspective, the financial position appears stable and broadly in line with expectations at this stage of the year. However, the favourable variance is modest relative to the size of the budget and largely attributable to temporary factors such as timing differences and staffing vacancies rather than ongoing improvements. There's also indications of emerging pressures within the operating environment. So user charges down 89,000 mainly due to lower Buller gas sales. Other revenue, as in lower plant and fleet usage income, is down 82,000. Council is earning less than budgeted in some services. In addition to the level of capital works delivery suggests that full program completion within the financial year may be challenging. Overall, while the current position is sound, it highlights the importance of continued active financial management and monitoring, particularly as the year progresses towards final outcomes.
Thank you, councillor Shepherd. Councillor Burke, would you like to speak as seconder?
Nothing to add, thanks.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dowsley?
Thank you. I believe this report represents a realistic and sound assessment of the current finances of council. Obviously, there's some concerns there around the capital delivery component, but I'll discuss that further in item 13.1 when we talk about the capital works report.
Thank you, councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I appreciate the importance of regular financial monitoring and transparent reporting throughout the year. However, I also think it's important that we continue looking beyond short-term monthly positions and keep focused on the longer-term financial sustainability of our decisions and priorities. For me, the key question is not simply whether figures are currently favourable, but whether our spending decisions are genuinely aligned with the real and immediate needs of our communities. How do we continue balancing rising infrastructure pressures, ageing assets and community expectations, while also maintaining long-term financial sustainability? And how do we ensure the financial decisions we make today continue to deliver the strongest possible benefits for the broader community over the longer term? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll go back to you, Councillor Shepherd. Would you like to sum up? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.4 is PA 240183, planning permit for 29 Tomlinson's Road, Beechworth. I'll go to the Director of Planning and Corporate Services, Greg Pinkerton.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I'd like to table an updated version of the conditions. Since the agenda was published, Council's infrastructure team has continued to work with the engineers for the developer, particularly on Section 20. In the previously published conditions, Section 20 contains an earth berm to protect the property at 10 Lakeside Way. The discussions that have happened more recently indicate that there may be a better way of achieving this. So the updated conditions that I am tabling tonight replaces that earth berm, or doesn't replace it, but replaces a condition to say that prior to the commencement of works, a flood impact assessment will be completed by a suitably qualified hydrologist to assess whether an earth berm is the correct choice there, or whether there's a better way of treating that to protect the property at 10 Lakeside Way. The result of that study will then be implemented as part of this permit, and it will be overseen by Council's engineers as well as the North East Catchment Management Authority. So, with apologies for the late change, we're fairly keen to make sure that we've got the latest engineering into this subdivision. So, I'll table that amended version, please.
So can I confirm, Director, there's no change to the recommendation because it says subject to the conditions? You're just raising with the meeting that there has been a change to the conditions and that's the change you've just listed?
Yes, and there's a change in about 3 places, but essentially it all comes down to, as I described, that change in the engineering. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Director. So, councillors, the item is for decision and the recommendation is that Council grants planning permit PA 240183 to subdivide land into 12 lots in the low density residential zone and bushfire management overlay, subject to the conditions. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Burke, seconded Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support this application very simply because Indigo Shire needs more housing, particularly in our townships. This project provides 12 residential lots over 4 acres in Beechworth. Local businesses and the community are telling us the same thing. Housing supply is tight and it's becoming harder for people to live locally. This proposal is consistent with the approved development plan, has been assessed against flooding, drainage, bushfire, environmental and infrastructure requirements. Relevant authorities have reviewed the application and raised no objections, subject to some conditions, and Council has also set conditions to be met by the developer. I acknowledge community concerns around development, but if we continue saying no to appropriate housing projects in suitable locations, we risk making the housing shortage even worse. This proposal represents a balanced approach to growth while recognising environmental and servicing constraints, including staged delivery due to the sewer capacity limitations. For those reasons, I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Dowsley.
Thank you. It's important that we remain clear about the role of councillors in the planning process. Our responsibility is to apply and enact the planning scheme consistently, fairly and lawfully. The development plan has already been approved in March this year, and this planning permit application has been assessed as being consistent with the approved development plan. I acknowledge also, as Councillor Burke did, that there has been strong community interest in this proposal, particularly around matters such as flooding, stormwater, infrastructure, traffic, neighbourhood character and environmental impacts. These concerns are understandable. However, the technical assessments before us indicate these matters have been considered through the appropriate statutory processes. Relevant referral authorities have not objected to the proposal and detailed conditions have been defined. Recent VCAT decisions reinforce the importance of ensuring our decisions are grounded firmly in the planning scheme, supported by evidence and capable of standing up to independent scrutiny. I'm confident the application complies with the adopted planning controls, the approved DP, referral authorities and appropriate permit conditions have been applied. For these reasons, I'm supporting the officer recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Horn.
Oh, just a question to Director of Planning, Mr. Pinkerton. In the development plan stage, we talked about having access from that side of Beechworth through to Lake Samble. And I know that there was discussion about how we were going to make that happen. And I can see you flicking through pages, so I'll really talk slowly. Oh, good. So I'll use my 3 minutes. So I'm just interested in if you could give us what's happened since that development plan stage and how we are going to make that occur.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, sorry. Yes, so there's a piece of Crown land to the north of this site that would allow access through to the lake. Since the development plan, we've worked with the developer about ensuring that access goes through. So there's two parts to that. The first part is access through the property. And this is notable because some of the roads in there will be private roads, basically driveways. So there's not an automatic access as you would get on a public road. So to address that, we've got a condition in there, which I couldn't find, but the condition basically says that part of the permit requires public access through that land. And the mechanism is likely to involve an easement or a Section 173 agreement. We'll work with our lawyers on what that is, and that will allow access through the subdivision to that Crown land parcel. And the second part is just to make sure that the developer will supply a gate through to that area. So that's the way that we've addressed that concern that came up at development plan stage.
And can I ask another question just about trees? I realise it's in a bushfire zone, bushfire hazard area, but there's a discussion in there about what sort of plants, what sort of trees are going to be planted. So are we going to, I know we talk about having a 30% canopy over subdivisions. What's our expectation with this one?
Thank you for the question. I can't remember.
I suppose my reason for asking it is with our ESD strategy, we're talking about the importance of having canopy trees to ensure that with climate risks that we have and that we're covered. People are not sitting out in the sun without some sort of protection and us expecting there to be good tree coverage, so a shade coverage. So it's just something we're looking at from now on, I think. And I know that it's not overly spoken about in this particular plan, but just because I know the developers in the room, that's an issue for me, that we do have better canopy coverage.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn, sorry, you were going to go next.
There's a obvious and pressing need to increase housing supply and to manage growth in an orderly and well-planned way. At the same time, developments in environmentally sensitive areas require careful oversight, particularly around stormwater, drainage, flooding, and bushfire management. I'm pleased to see that these matters have been examined in detail and addressed through the permit conditions. For me, the key issue is ensuring growth occurs responsibly and sustainably while protecting the character and livability of the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to make a speak to the motion? Councillor Landels.
Thank you. This particular development has attracted a lot of community interest, understandably, because the opportunity to add new residential housing to the stock in Beechworth is I guess there's limited areas of Beechworth where this can occur, and this particular part of Beechworth is one area. I do just note, looking through the documentation, that there will be, Tomlinson Road will be constructed, so it'll be sealed from Stanley Road to the proposed Court Bowl. We'll have a 6.2 metre wide seal with a 1.5 metre sealed shoulder, which is pretty generous. When you look around a lot of roads, you don't often see a sealed shoulder of 1.5 metres wide. That's approximately, well, it's same width as a lot of footpaths. And sealed shoulders add considerably to safety, just giving that extra bit of manoeuvrability. The other thing that occurs when you seal roads is that it encourages vehicles to go faster. And that's always a bit of a concern. And I do note there's a traffic impact assessment as one of the conditions here. So we will have the appropriate experts conduct that in due course, and that'll be good to see what their recommendations are.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll just say, again, we can hear from the debate, we're all after really good development. We don't want to be adding in any way to the housing crisis. We don't want to be a council that unnecessarily frustrates a process or stifles a process, but we will speak out of both sides of our mouth and in the same breath say that we expect a really high standard. We expect developments and subdivisions to continue to make sense in the towns that they're in, to be consistent with the township, and that's why we're drawing particular focus to things like access. If there's a subdivision right near Lake Samble, the residents should be able to have some access to Lake Samble. That's definitely a part of what we expect in a town like Beechworth, and similarly understanding how private driveways work with providing thoroughfares through new estates. So as we continue to build our towns, we want them to make sense with what is already there, as I say, without frustrating the process. We welcome really good development of a really high standard that fits in with our communities. Councillor Burke, I'll go back to you. Would you like to sum up?
Nothing more to add, thanks.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.5 is PA 260014, planning permit Scott Street, Rutherglen. The item is for decision. The recommendation is, Councillor Dowsley, did you want to move an alternate? Sorry, are you wanting to move a recommendation?
I'm happy to move that.
Sorry, Councillor Shepherd, didn't
Yep.
see you there.
So
Shepherd, what's your motion?
my motion is that that council grants a planning permit subject to conditions for the subdivision of land in the general residential zone and low density residential zone, and to subdivide land adjacent to a road in a transport zone 2, and 2, requires a landscape plan referred to in condition 4 to aim to achieve 30% canopy cover consistent with the state government target unless the, sorry, got to get on my, yes, unless the responsible authority is satisfied that the full 30% canopy cover cannot reasonably be achieved.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. So, councillors, if we get a seconder, that becomes the motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would. This is a development that came to us early in the piece. We had the developers come and talk to us. They gave us their vision. We listened to their vision. We discussed what they felt should happen there. It looked like they were people that were on the same sort of spectrum as us. They were concerned about how they were going to grow Rutherglen, but grow it in a way that was responsible and in a way that allowed people to walk to Rutherglen, that there was good movement within the development, that there was great open space, that there was opportunity for commercial growth in that area, perhaps a doctor's surgery, perhaps a childcare. There's absolutely scope for that. I think the only thing that it went out to our ESD was looked at from our environmental sustainability development strategy, and most things were covered. There were probably the main things that were raised were water and how that was going to be addressed, and we've covered that in a condition. And then, of course, we were pretty concerned about making sure that there was enough tree coverage in Rutherglen, because as all of us are aware, Rutherglen is going to be very hot eventually, and is getting hotter. So it would be important that we ensure that there's at least 30% tree canopy coverage for those residents. So I'm in support of this development, and I think Rutherglen will be happy to see it, and I'm really happy with the process as well. And I'm hoping that in any other new developments that we have, we're able to lay it on the line that these are our expectations when we're having development in Indigo Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Dowsley.
Thank you. Last September, we approved a planning permit for a subdivision at Slaughterhouse Road in Rutherglen. I said at the time I supported sustainable development in Indigo Shire. I also recognise the real need across Australia to increase housing supply, but careful planning is what keeps our communities safe, connected and livable. There was much I didn't like about Slaughterhouse Road subdivision design, and Council subsequently developed and endorsed our environmentally sustainable development policy in February 2026. This was our first step in making changes to our planning scheme so that we could make some improvements. This development at Scott Street is good. It creates and contributes to community. I said as much when we approved the development plan. I really do actually like this subdivision. I will support the planning permit tonight. However, as we implement our ESD policy, including the Built Environment Sustainability Scorecard, or BESS, I'm personally learning more and more about what leading practice looks like, and my expectations are changing. So, although I will vote to approve the planning permit, I'd like to really challenge the developer to consider what best practice items could be considered when developing their landscape plan for this development. There are some low-cost additions that could make this subdivision not just good, but great. Examples such as, and these are just a few very minor ones, and there are lots in the BESS, 40% tree canopy coverage in public open spaces. Public open space design to include consideration of habitat creation. I also note in the plans, it talks about possible playground equipment in the public open spaces. Providing bench seating at logical locations, potentially for the elderly to be able to walk around the block and have rest points. And providing bicycle hoops at logical locations, such as at the open space areas. So there's some really low-hanging fruit there that I think could really make this subdivision great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsey. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn?
This is obviously a very significant proposal for Rutherglen and an important opportunity to help support the town's future growth and long-term sustainability. With increasing demand for housing across our region, it's encouraging to see a well-planned development that includes open space and variety of lot sizes and the potential for future community-serving facilities. At the same time, growth must continue to be matched with thoughtful infrastructure planning, landscaping, drainage, connectivity, and protection of the character and livability that people value so highly in Rutherglen. Handled well, development such as this can help strengthen our community, support local businesses, and create opportunities for future generations continue to live and work in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor? Councillor Burke?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I also support this planning permit because Rutherglen also needs, as Beechworth needs, more housing to support future growth and keep the town vibrant and sustainable. Importantly, this proposal is consistent with the approved development plan and the Indigo planning scheme, and council staff have concluded that it represents orderly and appropriate planning for the area. The subdivision for 86 housing lots also includes appropriate amenities such as open space and footpaths while respecting the character of Rutherglen and supporting future residential growth in a suitable location. If we want regional towns like Rutherglen to continue attracting families, workers and investment, we need to support sensible and well-planned housing developments like this project. For those reasons, I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Andels.
Thank you. This particular development, obviously, as other councillors have mentioned, it adds residential housing to the market, considerable stock, 86 lots across 4 stages is what's planned. But it's also important to note it's in a location in Rutherglen where reticulated water and sewerage capacity is guaranteed by North East Water, and that is a little bit of an outlier, I guess, throughout our shire. There's a lot of restrictions on that infrastructure. So Rutherglen does have that capacity to grow. But also note the the points around tree canopy aims of that's going to be increasingly important as we see this particular development and other developments we expect to come in Rutherglen. That will be an ongoing area of need as far as the tree canopy. There also, this particular proposal has a variety of lot sizes and also the solar orientation of the blocks is achievable to maximise energy efficiency. And also it's what I would call a holistic development in that it's not just a whole bunch of houses. There's other aspects to it that have been considered as far as the livability within and the way it connects to other parts of Rutherglen and even an area set aside for commercial development, as been mentioned, childcare centre and potentially medical centre as well. So I think these things are really important when we're adding significant numbers of residences to also bring some of those other aspects to the developments.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. I won't go over all the same comments, but I'm largely in agreement with most of what's been said. I think this represents a really good development. It represents a really great contribution to Rutherglen, and I think that it's a competitive environment over there in terms of the availability of land now, and so I think good development will really rise to the top over there now, and I think this will be a representation of that. So this is the sort of development that we welcome, and to highlight some of the things that councillors have said, but particularly the tree canopy. When we look at Rutherglen, as Councillor Shepherd said, into the future, we see a really, really hot climate for them, and a massive contribution to that being a quite limited tree canopy that currently exists. So any developments that seek to achieve the state target of 30% tree canopy or even go further beyond that, we would really welcome and encourage, because it means that they understand the community and they want to make a positive contribution with their development. So I will leave my comments there. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to sum up?
Just that I think we've made it pretty plain to our planning department and to our development community that we have we're pretty concerned that our developments match our environmentally sustainable development strategy, that we create great communities, and we're going to push a bit in this area. So we really welcome support in that area.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 12 is Community and Economic Development, and item 12.1 is Get Active Indigo Grants 2026. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council receives the Get Active Indigo Grants 2026 Assessment Panel Recommendation Report, and 2, endorses the distribution of funds as recommended by the Assessment Panel as follows. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 applicants who have received funding totaling $30,000 that's recommended. I'm not going to read them all out. I will ask for a mover for that recommendation, Councillor Shepherd, and a seconder, Councillor Burt. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as the mover?
Sure. So this is relatively small amount of money, but it's really an important community grants program that supports participation in physical activity across the Shire and across the age groups. And it helps community groups deliver programs that may not be able to otherwise fund, and improves access to local opportunities for people to get active. So we have an independent panel that we really have given the protocol and our concerns and what we thought the rating should be. We've looked at all of that in part of the process before these grants applications went out. And they've been independently assessed, and the recommendations fully allocate the available funding in line with the program criteria. If we were to revisit the individual projects, we would effectively be replacing the independent assessment process, which is not the intent of, well, it's not my intent. That's why I've really supported an independent assessment panel. If we have concerns with the process, we need to review the process before the next round, and we need to look at the criteria, look at our panel, and discuss it if we think that there's things that need to be changed. But overall, I think this is a great outcome. I look forward to receiving feedback on the success of these projects, and I just think it'll be fantastic to watch what's happening with the community barefoot bowls, the croquet, the outdoor fitness, the swing into golf. Sounds like it's going to be quite an active Indigo Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Burke, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yeah, I think this is one of the great things that we're able to do. We enable groups to do things that they may not normally do. I speak from personal experience that because of this community event, the Community Barefoot Bowls in Kiwa, I'm now a bit of an expert in bowls. Well, I think I'm an expert at it. I don't think everyone else does. But I'm the sort of person that there's lots of us there. We come out and in summer we play barefoot bowls, and it's just a great night. It's a great night for community. It's a fundraiser for the club, and that's good. So if the other events are anywhere near as good as what the barefoot bowls function is, I fully support it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I was the person that chaired the final meeting to reach these decisions. And as chairperson, I did not have a vote, nor did I seek to influence the committee in any way. I just wanted to keep it, on the straight and narrow, keep things moving along. As far as I could see, everything was discussed thoroughly, and every application was gone over very carefully. And some of these groups asked for a lot more money than they actually got, because some things were not considered appropriate for a grant. So from my viewpoint, I'll reinforce the fact that I believe the committee was free, fair, and independent. And then there were a couple of occasions when certain members of the committee excused themselves because there was a conflict of interest. And it's very hard in a rural shire like ours, a regional shire, where people are involved in all kinds of things and all kinds of sports and clubs, to get people who have no connection with any of these items. So just from my viewpoint, I thought the meeting was free, fair, and above board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dowsley.
Thank you. At the council meeting in October 2025, I moved a notice of motion instructing the CEO to undertake a review of Indigo Shire Council's grants program and present findings and recommendations to council prior to adoption of the 26-27 budget. That motion was endorsed by council. During debate on that motion, I outlined a number of concerns relating to governance, consistency of process, and the importance of maintaining community confidence in the integrity of our grants programs. Importantly, council has a responsibility to ensure grant funding is allocated fairly, transparently, and in accordance with the adopted assessment criteria and processes. Councillors are yet to receive a briefing on the review that is scheduled to come before the June council meeting, and I remain concerned about aspects of governance and process in relation to the current grant allocations. Our grants program contains defined assessment criteria, and selection panels are provided with structured processes for assessing and scoring applications against those criteria. Where assessment scoring appears to have been departed from, or where commentary unrelated to the adopted criteria is included within confidential assessment documentation, it raises concerns for me about the consistency, transparency, and integrity of the process. Accordingly, if this motion lapses, I foreshadow an alternate motion seeking to amend the list of successful applications.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I'm very supportive of programs such as this, the Get Active Indigo grants, because relatively modest funding can make an enormous difference at grassroots community level. These initiatives help strengthen participation, social connection, well-being, and active lifestyles across age groups. They also support volunteers and local organisations that are so important to the fabric of our communities. I'm particularly pleased to see projects that encourage cross-generational participation and opportunities for people to stay active and connected close to home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. I'd add my comments. I think that in the time that I've been on council, we've seen reports like the report into Yarri-Ambiac Council, which really highlighted the delicate nature of conducting grants and grant panels, and really put it out to the sector to say councillors should be very mindful of their involvement in those processes. And that made us all sit up straight appropriately and look at our grant processes and make sure that councillors can be involved in the appropriate steps, which is really to set the criteria in alignment with our council plan, in alignment with our strategies, to set the process and the panel, to ask them to go away and do that work independent of us, with the oversight of a councillor, to be able to reflect back to this councillor group that the process was sound, and then at the end to receive the recommendation from the panel. At this point in time, if I had any problem with either the recipients or the process, I think that I would have to flag that as a process issue. I certainly don't think that I could reallocate or strike out any funding, because I am very mindful of that Yarri-Ambiac report really clearly establishing my role, and I would be first looking to any deficits in the criteria or the process that we've set up, rather than any poor reflection on the panel. So I'm confident to be able to say that in reviewing the criteria that we set, the processes that we outlined, and keeping the Yarri-Ambiac report front of mind always, that this process has been conducted in accordance with everything that we've given to the panel and our staff in the way that we'd like it to be conducted. Can the process be strengthened? Always, and I always welcome that. I think that that's the best thing that we can do, is constantly review, set clearer criteria, make sure that it's constantly being realigned with whatever our strategies or council plan actions are at that time. But lastly, I'd say for $30,000 worth of investment, I'm sure that each of these groups is going to triple the investment in terms of what the output will be for our community. And so I'm always going to encourage confidence in us maintaining a grant like this. I know they're really well regarded in the community. I know that the process is really well scrutinised by the community as well when they look at what projects have been awarded. And I hope to be invited to some of these programs so I can be an expert in barefoot bowls or something similar, such as Councillor Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Otherwise, I'll go back to the mover. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to sum up?
I think you summed up Councillor Price. I would like to thank Councillor Harvey for giving his feedback about he saw the process. And I must say, Yari Ambiak, fair enough, but I do like to have a councillor as an observer and often the chair without having any opportunity really to influence anything, just so that this can happen. So we're able to say, how did you think that went? And he said it was managed well. The governance was good. So that's great to hear. And I mean, it sounds like we're struggling a little bit, but we're not. I'm not. I'd just like to thank the panel, really, who they're not paid for this, really. Some of the independent members, I just like to thank them all for doing the work. And it's a lot of work to read all of these and then to put them against the assessment criteria and then to make a decision and balance it all up. And I think, as you've all said, it's going to be great to see this money go out to the community and then to triple it, quadruple it in what rate of return. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? The motion is carried. In favour was Councillors Harvey, Price, Shepherd, Burke, Landells, Horn, and against Councillor Dowsley. Move now to item 12.2, the Swimming Pools Season Report 2025-2026. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council receives the 2025-26 Swimming Pools Season Report. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Burke, seconded Councillor Landells. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I want to acknowledge everyone who helped deliver these important community facilities each summer. There's a lot of work that goes into this. Council staff, Belgravia leisure staff, and the many volunteers and community groups that all combined make the swimming program work. This is a very positive report, with total pool visitation across the Shire increasing by more than 5,400 visits compared with last season, with Yakandanda, Beechworth and Tangambalanga well up on last year's numbers, and with Chiltern and Rutherglen very close to last year's numbers. In particular, I want to highlight the outstanding result at my local pool, the Tangam pool. Attendance more than doubled from a little over 2,000 visits last year to over 4,500 this season. And it was great to have such an increase. And that's a very strong indicator of how valued and well used this facility is by the whole Kiewa Valley community. The report also highlights the importance of programming and community activation through initiatives such as Vic Swim, youth events and other activities across the 5-pool network. It's also encouraging to see local community members becoming more involved, and I'm pleased that at the Tangam pool, a user group has now been formed to liaise with council staff and help support the future direction of the facility. Overall, this report demonstrates the important role our pools play in supporting community wellbeing, connection and active lifestyles across Indigo Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Landells, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yes, please. I've got a question for Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice. It's about, firstly, I wanted to say it's a great, it's a really thorough report, but I was really curious about the visitation increase, which is roughly, it's about around 25% right across the Shire. And can you shed any light on that? Like, I know we had some extreme heat in summer where we had some free days and that kind of thing. I think we were perhaps a bit fortunate with the cooler weather in November, a later season start, but are there any other obvious factors that we should be aware of?
Thanks, Councillor Landells, and through you, Mayor Price. I think it's a combination of things, the favourable weather, the slight adjustment to the season opening this year, where we delayed the start of the season and extended until the Easter period. That had benefits in the usage. The programming was very strong this year, and there were a couple of really big old successful events held at the facilities. So I think overall it was a really positive year for the pools. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank our staff for keeping our pools open. We will have to make the community aware that these are very aging pools, and it takes an awful lot of resources to keep them open at the moment. And the more the community patronizes them, the more we'll be able to maintain them. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Yeah, I'd just say this is a report that we always pay particular attention to, but increasingly as our budget gets tighter, we're really interested in this service because we know that it's a really highly valued service within our communities. It's also a very expensive service, and it continues to get more and more expensive. So we always want to see how the community values it. I think it's always important that we point out the level of subsidy that we provide per attendee, not to shock everyone, but to just understand what it costs to run these pools in a rural setting. We subsidise users up to $67 per attendance across our pools. Those numbers vary across the different locations, but it is a significant subsidy that we provide to your $5 entry or your $4 entry or whatever the cost may be. We do that because we see the value in the service as well. We will absolutely continue to do that, but it really is an ongoing conversation about the most utilised times of the year for these pools. If we could predict weather, we could nail the season down really clearly, but there's always, could it have opened earlier because it was warmer this year, or could it stay open later because it was warmer later in the year, or why did you bother opening? It was such a wet such and such. So it's hard in a small season to really be able to maximise that, but that is absolutely our aim and our intention. As I say, most of these pools are community pools. People have really clear ownership over them, and we completely understand that and continue to value them as you do. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Otherwise, I'll go back to Councillor Burke to sum up. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just further your comments around the subsidies. That is something that we all have to be aware of, that the pools are getting older. There's a lot more maintenance required. And we as a council, I think, can justify the very large expense that goes into it when we see very high levels of usage. But it is something that we have to be very aware of. And we're not the only council having this issue. Albury Council's headlines about their winter programs in their pools. Outdoor pools are expensive to run. And there's also a propensity of a lot of new homes having pools in their backyard, and that just reduces the numbers who would be going to these public pools. So I just encourage everyone to use the pools. Lots of people I talk to, they say, I remember growing up as a kid and we went to the local pool, but I haven't taken my grandchildren there or my kids there. And I encourage them to go there. And one good friend of ours said they took their grandchildren there and they had a wonderful time over the Christmas holidays at the pool. So I just encourage people to, for the pools in your town or your local pool, just use it.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13 is infrastructure services, and item 13.1 is the Capital Works report for April 2026. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 notes the April 2026 Capital Works report and year-to-date progress in the delivery of the Capital Works program. Could I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Landels, seconded Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Landels.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say that it's great to get this very detailed breakdown on how we're progressing. We've been receiving this throughout the financial year, and at this point, we have a couple of months for the financial year. It appears we are a little bit behind where we would like to be as far as fully completing the program. So I just have a question to the Director of Infrastructure Services. Can you clarify what occurs in a situation where we have some outstanding projects at the end of the financial year?
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question. We do a reconciliation post the end of the year. So if there are projects that remain unfinished, then we would look to carry those forward. We normally do that at the quarter one review, so that would come through to the October meeting.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other comment. This is just, I was quite encouraged to see that we're doing drainage works in Waganya, in a particular part of the new estate that's been prone for many years to flooding. And I think with the discussions, it's interesting in the context of discussions we're having about new subdivisions and some of the standards that we're putting in place. I think if we had our time over again, that Waganya subdivision would probably be done fairly differently because there's no footpaths in the whole estate, and also flooding was a key issue. So it's great that it's being addressed. I'm sure the Waganya community will be really pleased to see that.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak as seconder?
Sure, thank you. I'm confident that this report is an accurate reflection of where the Capital Works is at the end of April. But I think it's important to note or remind ourselves that in February we carried forward $7.6 million of capital works, reducing our $15.9 million capital budget down to a little over $8 million for this financial year. This update suggests that there will be a potential further $1 million or thereabouts carried over at year end. This reinforces my earlier comments during budget discussions regarding capacity to deliver and being transparent with community, doing what we say we will, and showing we are responsible and accountable financial managers. I don't have anything further to say.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
Just in response to that, this Capital Works report is absolutely the time when we've got to interrogate and ask questions and push perhaps even as to what's going on and why is that behind. And often we've asked in briefing, so we probably could ask a bit more in a council meeting, so we're very transparent, but we go through this quite we haven't this one we've only just received, but month to month we go through it with our manager and discuss what's behind, what's happening here. So I get that it would be great to end the end of the year with exactly the budgeted amount being spent But I also understand that it's transparent for us to ask what the delays are. And if we're comfortable with those delays, I'm hoping the community is going to be comfortable as well. And if we're not, that's when we're able to say, well, we're not comfortable with that something needs to happen. So I understand concerns around it, but I do really think I'm really pleased that we've got these monthly opportunities to interrogate this report.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Yeah, I'd just like to say, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Dowsley. That's something that we would all like to achieve. In lieu of being able to achieve that, I'm really pleased with the level of communication that we received from the organisation. There's nothing that I'm unsure about. I'd like it all to be further progressed than it might be. But I think the communication is clear. We understand what the task is of Capital Works and the ongoing issues with carry forwards and trying to understand and take really carriage of the program. So I welcome more discussion about that and thank the organisation for the ongoing opportunity to really interrogate the program and the monitor as frequently as we do. When I speak to some of my other councillor colleagues, they don't have that available to them as frequently as we do, so I really recognise that. If no one else would like to speak to the motion, I'll go back to you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Landells would like to sum up.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on the points that have been made by other councillors. We've got we constantly have the opportunity to get really accurate reports and updates and to interrogate where progress is at. And I think it's the thing that strikes me when I look at Capital Works, you could sort of think, oh yeah, Capital Works, that's doing, work on roads and footpaths and infrastructure and whatever, but it actually is broader than that. There's also all the plant and fleet and equipment that is part of that. There's also IT systems and different upgrading of security systems and things like that as well. So it really is, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And I think the key, yes, we'd all like it to come in 100% at the end of financial year, but I think the key thing is that the outstanding items are addressed and they're currently, the process is they get carried forward to the next financial year, but obviously we're always working towards getting towards that magic 100% figure. And I think I personally welcome hearing the degree of interrogation that I guess goes on from all the different councillors when we have those updates. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landells. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Sorry. And those against? The item is carried. Those in favour is Councillor Harvey, Price, Shepherd, Burke, Landells, Horn. Those against, Councillor Dowsley. The motion's carried. Sorry, Councillor Dowsley. So that's voted for unanimously, carried unanimously. Item 13.2 is the Yakandenda Caravan Park EOI proposal. The item is for decision. Councillor Dowsley?
Can I please propose an alternate motion?
You can propose a motion, yes.
A motion. Do you want me to read it out or just the changes?
You can read it out if you like.
The motion is that Council 1 notes that following the receipt of the flood impact assessment report for the Yakandenda Caravan Park, development of the park in line with the master plan previously adopted by Council in 2022 is unlikely. 2 notes the intention to offer a 3-year lease to a suitably experienced operator to be selected following a public expression of interest process to enable time for council to review the current master plan in light of the flood impact assessment report and consider future development opportunities for the park, possibly through a revised master plan. 3, endorses the following evaluation criteria for the expression of interest process. A, proposed operating model 30%. B, business experience of proponent 30%. C, financial return to council 40%. D, financial capacity of proponent, mandatory criterion. 4, notes that the approval of the lease will be handled by the CEO under delegation. 5, notes a revised. My apologies, I'm looking at the wrong version. 5, notes a caravan park review, including demand analysis, will be completed by the end of 26-27 to inform next steps.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Councillors, that's obviously the motion that's been circulated prior to the meeting. Do I have somebody to second that? Seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. This is an important item for the community of Yackandandah, and I know there has been very strong community interest in the future of the caravan park, possibly for a long time, but definitely since the master planning process in 2022. The master plan reflected an ambitious vision for the future of this important community and tourism asset, and I'm personally disappointed the adopted master plan cannot be delivered as originally intended. Unfortunately, this reflects a reality that many communities across Australia are now confronting: the impacts of climate change, including the increasing frequency and severity of weather events. The flooding incident at Lorne on the 15th of January this year reinforces the potential impacts of such events. What may once have been considered acceptable flood risk is now being reassessed through a very different lens. Insurers, regulators, governments and communities are all adjusting their risk appetite in response to more frequent flooding events and more extreme weather patterns. While it is understandable, it also creates difficult challenges for communities that rely on infrastructure and tourism assets located near waterways and floodplains. The caravan park is not simply a camping ground, it is a critical tourism asset for Yackandandah and plays a very important role in supporting the wider economic prosperity of the town. Visitors staying at the caravan park contribute directly to local cafes, pubs, retail businesses, events and tourism operators. They support local jobs and help sustain the vibrancy of the town. For many visitors, the caravan park also provides an accessible and affordable way to experience Yackandandah, which is incredibly important as cost of living pressures continue to affect many families. The challenge before us now is how we respond. While it is disappointing that the full master plan cannot proceed as originally intended, we need to adapt to these changed circumstances while recognising the importance of this asset to the town and broader Shire. Accordingly, I have proposed this alternate motion and recommend it to my fellow councillors. Really, it's just the same motion, but I've added the 5th element there to just assure the community that we're not going to sit on this for 3 years. We're moving forward and making sure that the next steps are completed as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder?
I don't have much to add really, other than I absolutely agree with everything you have said. I know that that caravan park is an important asset to Yackandandah, that the community have been concerned about what's happening with the master plan, and now with the flood risk assessment. We don't want to look as though we're just going to let it sit there. It was an amazing master plan. I was excited about it, and I think the community saw the potential in it for the bike riders. There was just some great pods, and yeah, it was going to be quite a great upgrade. So we're all a little bit flat on that, and I'm sure the community is as well. So I really support your extra number 5, where we do go that little bit further and look at the demand analysis throughout Yackandandah. What needs to happen, and then review that caravan park and talk about what's next and do it quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
Yes, I would like to speak to the motion, but I would first like to ask a question in regard to the CEO's delegation in this matter. With such a large amount of money, could you please explain to the community how it is that you will be deciding this matter under delegation?
CEO.
Thanks for the question, councillor. How it will be decided will be based on the direction council has given me, and the council has asked, subject to the vote today, the council will be asking me to call for expressions of interest. It's given me the criteria, and I'll be assessing any applications through the LOI process against the criteria that council has set for me, as well as as well as complies then with all the requirements of the lease. That's how we'll assess it.
Thank you. I would like to speak to it. I appreciate the practical approach being taken following the flood impact assessment, and I agree it's important that council reassess the long-term direction of the park carefully and realistically. However, for me, the issue of commercial realism sits very much front and centre in this discussion. I do question how attractive a relatively short 3-year lease arrangement is likely to be for experienced operators. If council is also seeking strong financial return outcomes and potentially contemplating significant future investment in the site, particularly in the context of broader financial pressures and substantial recent investment in other caravan park infrastructure, I believe it's important that major capital commitments continue to be weighted carefully against wider community priorities and broader whole of community benefit. For me, the key issue is ensuring the future investment decisions are realistic and sustainable and deliver the strongest long-term value for broader community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bird.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I support the motion and especially the inclusion of the review, emphasising on the demand analysis. And I think before making any long-term investment decision, it's important that council understands future tourism demand, and that would also help in any EOI process as well, I would expect. So I think that's something that I'm certainly supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I support this motion. I'd also support the idea of a 3-year lease because given the problems that have developed there recently, I think it's going to take us a while to sort them out. And as long as council works very hard, perhaps at the end of 3 years, we will be able to offer something that a commercial operator would look at favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'd just like to say a couple of things. We've obviously had the very successful process with the Rutherglen Caravan Park and the Beechworth Caravan Park, and it was, as we know, time to turn our mind to the Yackandandah Caravan Park. And we were in the process of that when this flood impact assessment was commissioned and received, and this new setting is sort of realised. As you said, Councillor Dowsey, I think it's really important to identify that as as a real climate change risk. That's something that's come to us that has the new risk settings as you've identified. But I'd want to say to the Yackandandah community and to people who might be interested in this EOI process as well, that our commitment to the Yackandandah Caravan Park and the Yackandandah community and understanding this is a really significant accommodation offering in Yackandandah it remains. We really understand the value of this park, want to see it achieve exactly the role that it can play in the township of Yackandandah. And I think that we've been quite nimble and responded quite quickly to get this process to council in May. And I hope that shows our commitment to being able to realise in time that much longer term lease, the 21-year lease. I think these are appropriate steps. I hope that this is a really inviting process for prospective operators for this short term, while we really take stock and understand and get clarity about what our vision is for Yackandandah and for this part of the accommodation offering, because as I say, it's something we're really committed to. That's why we did our caravan park strategies and master plans. And we want to see a really successful offering in Yackandandah, as we've been able to see with Chiltern and Beechworth. So I look forward to receiving the next part of this process. If no other councillor would like to speak to the motion, I'll go to Councillor Dowsley. Would you like to sum up?
No, I think it's all been covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Horn, are you in favour, or sorry, you're against? Okay, so those against? So the motion is carried with Councillor Harvey, Dowsley, Price, Shepherd, Burke, Landells in favour and Councillor Horn against. The motion's carried. Item 13.3 is the Sustainable Council Buildings Policy 2026. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council adopts the Sustainable Council Buildings Policy 2026. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Landells. Councillor Shepherd.
So this has been out for community review, and I'd like to thank the community members that responded. And it's also went to the Indigo Environment Advisory Committee, and they gave very clear responses, and we updated it with their expertise and knowledge. And I think it's a really important step forward for council, rather than what I would find myself often doing is saying, well, what about, is there solar on that? What's the landscape plan? And people just be like, oh, here she goes again. So it's really great to have now a strategy, I think, and it's just a beginning one. There are some really strong elements in this policy, particularly in the focus on designing buildings that are climate resilient, improving energy efficiency, and moving towards renewable energy, incorporating better water management and sustainable landscaping. I also think the emphasis on considering these issues early in the design process is a real strength. Like all new policies, it's a starting point. As we implement it, we'll learn what works, and there'll be opportunities to strengthen it over time, particularly around setting clearer targets and continuing to lift our ambition. I'd really like to acknowledge and thank Council Sustainability Manager Isla Fittridge and Officer Annie Brown for their work, Annie Bryan for their work and contribution to developing this policy, and the valuable and expert advice from the Environment Advisory Committee. And thanks to the community members who submitted their feedback. It's all been a very important feedback that we've incorporated. So thank you. And hopefully this is going to be great to have it instead of me.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Landells, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yeah, thank you. Not a whole lot to add. I did attend via an online opportunity. I was a guest at the IEAC meeting where this policy was discussed. And I'd just like to say that I really appreciate the expertise of the members of the advisory committee. I think it's why we have advisory committees, that they bring a really valuable, often industry-based experience to helping the council develop policies such as this one. And it's also, I think, an opportunity for us to have strong policy in this area, because we're asking private developers to, I guess, work to a higher standard, and it's important that council is, I guess, also living those values in what we're doing with council-owned facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Endels. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dalsey.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the intent behind this proposed environmentally sustainable design policy. I don't think anyone in the chamber would disagree with the broad objectives of improving energy efficiency, reducing waste, increasing climate resilience, and ensuring council assets are fit for the future. Many of the principles outlined in this policy are sensible and increasingly standard practice, particularly where they reduce long-term operational costs, improve building performance, or strengthen resilience to rising energy prices and climate-related risks. However, I'm just not quite there with this document. The recent changes that came through from the IEAC have been outlined in the report as being minor, but I don't necessarily agree that some of those changes are minor. My concerns are really around three of those most recent proposed changes. One is on page 1, objective 2. There's been some text there added that says minimising embedded energy of building materials. I would be more comfortable with the word reducing embodied energy of building materials as opposed to minimising. I believe that the word minimising, we haven't really defined what minimal means, whereas reducing, we can overlay a cost-benefit analysis if we're talking about reducing, but I don't understand what minimal looks like, what that standard would be. My second concern is around a change on page 2 in the list of standards, which has been added or changed, sorry, it's been modified to, or from increasing the use of electricity sourced from renewable energy, it's been changed to using only electricity sourced from renewable energy. I don't understand the impacts of that proposed change. And the third one is, once again, a change from a reduced environmental footprint to a minimal environmental footprint, where once again, I'm just not quite sure what the definition of minimal is and what sort of cost-benefit analysis is overlaid with achieving a minimal or minimum standard, as opposed to an ongoing objective to continually improve and continually reduce, which I'm more comfortable with. Therefore, at this point in time, I just don't quite feel ready to support this document, even though I wholeheartedly agree with the intent behind it. I'm just not quite there with some of the details.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I support the principle of improving sustainability, efficiency and long-term resilience of council buildings. However, I'd like to see a broader community focus, as I think it's vital that we continue asking practical questions around affordability, long-term value and measurable community benefits as these policies are implemented. How do we ensure sustainability measures remain financially realistic alongside the many other infrastructure pressures currently facing regional councils? How do we balance environmental aspirations with practical delivery and long-term operational savings? And how do we ensure these policies deliver tangible long-term benefits for the broader community through lowering running costs, improved resilience, and responsible future planning? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. I'm really excited by this policy because I think, similar to what Councillor Shepherd says, our approach to this over 10 years, certainly not in recent times, but maybe more like 10 years ago, was quite piecemeal. It was very inconsistent. And I remember when the Waganya Rec Reserve got a brand new facility, and there was all of the arguing about what should be inputs and what should be included in the facility. And, you really had to argue for certain windows and doors and all these sorts of treatments. And then they got the facility and it was fantastic, and they could not afford the power bill. And they came immediately, cap in hand, right back to council to say, I can't even remember what it was, and I wouldn't want to hazard a guess because it was astronomical, whatever the figure was. And then rightly so, we had to go back and find some way to put solar back on that building because we'd given them a building that they couldn't use. They were talking about making sure the fridges were turned off. Someone had to take the butter and the milk home. They couldn't keep the fridges running, could not afford the costs of the building. And then I think of buildings like the Chilk Community Hub, where it'd be great to have an image of what's on top of that roof, because I know that it is just covered in solar. But I know in that process as well that we exhausted every dollar and some in that project, and very easily we could have seen cost cutting in terms of solar or in terms of some of those energy efficiency items. And so I think that they're always, not always, but they can be the first thing to go. So by us making sure that we have a sustainable building design policy, which talks about all of those things, but so many more, it makes sure that we really understand the benefit and embed it, as you said, Councillor Shepherd, so that it's not something that's ad hoc, it's consistent. We understand the value and the benefit for ourselves, for the environment, for the community, for whoever the users are of those spaces, that it's a really valued investment. It's not something that's trimmed when you're looking for budget savings or looking at incorporating something else. It's something that's fundamental to every project. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Otherwise, sorry, Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything, but you just jogged my memory on a couple of points. And I think that the one thing that I got out of reading this policy is it's not just an environmental policy, it's also a financial sustainability policy. And that's because while there may be some higher upfront costs in projects like this and going into non-traditional energy costs, the report clearly outlines that better efficiency, energy efficiency, improved water management and smarter building design can deliver savings and reduced operational costs over time. And we've all seen that when we put solar in or batteries or something, it makes a huge difference. And this is especially important when we all know that traditional energy costs will only get higher and higher.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. I'll go back to you now, Councillor Shepherd, if you'd like to sum up.
I think you've all said very well to that strategy. I think I'd just remind you that that's when we started our sustainability grants, when we had to give them $20,000 or whatever it was for the solar and battery, and we couldn't justify it unless we did community grants for it. And that's the beginning. So, yeah, it is really good not to retrofit. It's really great to look at the beginning on what we think's good sustainable and financial sustainability is when we're building in. I get Councillor Dowsley that there are a couple of things in there that we could tweak from your perspective, and I think this is just a first one. Like, let's review it. Let's see how it's going. I think it's pretty progressive. I think so. We'll have to talk about this, I think, further.
Thank you, councillor Shepherd. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? So the motion's carried. Councillor Harvey, Price, Shepherd, Burke, Landell's voting for it. Councillor Horn and Dowsley against. Item 14 is Office of the CEO, and item 14.1 is the Advisory Committee minutes. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council accepts the attached unconfirmed meeting minutes for the following advisory committees and endorses the officer recommended actions. 1, the Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee, 2, Indigo, and 3, the Indigo Environment Advisory Committee for the 1st of April 2026 meeting and the 7th of May 2026 meeting. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Landell, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Landells.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, given that it's Volunteers Week, I'd like to say, first of all, thank you to all the volunteers on those 3 advisory committees. Having a quick count, I count about 15 or so, and just really thought that was important to acknowledge. But also, and I guess along those lines, I'd like to say that we value the time and the expertise that they bring to those advisory committees and note their various recommendations and input to our policies, plans and strategies.
Thank you, Councillor Landells. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll go back to you, Councillor Landells. Would you like to sum up?
No, thanks.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Councillor Harvey, Price, Shepherd, Burke, Landells, Horn voting for. Councillor Dowsley against. Item 14.2 is the informal meetings of councillors' records. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the attached informal meetings of councillors' records. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved by Councillor Shepherd, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Harvey? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 15 is notices of motion. Sia, there's no notices of motion. 16 is councillor reports. Would any councillor like to make a report to the council meeting? Councillor Landells.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to talk about one of the most resilient volunteer groups in our community, and I don't often like to single out a particular group, but I think it's appropriate to mention the Chiltern Athenaeum group. It's given that I guess their effective operations and access to their building have been closed for over 5 years while restoration works were undertaken. We know very well and very thoroughly about how complex those works were and also how frustrating it was for the community. It was fabulous to see it reopened on Sunday at an official opening, and it was a great community turnout, and look forward to them going back to, I guess, business as usual. And I have one other item too, if I could add it. Yep. It's just about the Ida Hobbit Day, which technically was on Sunday, but council celebrated it yesterday in Chiltern. And I wanted to particularly mention that, first of all, for the people who aren't aware, Ida Hobbit is, rather than just a call for inclusion, acceptance and celebration of the queer community, it goes further than that. It calls out gender identity, sexual orientation-based discrimination. I think it is really important to me. It addresses some of the fundamental aspects of a sense of belonging in a community, and that's about feeling safe and that you're in welcoming spaces. And I think that one of the things that I was very impressed with, and I guess it's just the organisation of the day, and I want to congratulate the council staff that were involved in that, and especially the way young people were empowered to really conduct the event. I think that's been a consistent feature of a lot of the youth events that I've been. Not that this is necessarily a youth event, it's for anyone of any generation, but to see some of our younger members of the community front and centre doing the speeches and performances and etc. was really wonderful, and I think it's a credit to the team that supports them in giving them a really strong voice in the community. Many of our strategic documents, I've mentioned it a few times here, we talk about thriving communities, and I always like to try and break that down from the macro down to the micro and think, well, how do you feel like you're thriving in a community? And I think it is really important that to get the most potential out of our communities, we want to see everyone feel like they're thriving. So I think taking the time out to for an event like Ida Hobbit, for example, is a great opportunity working towards that goal.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. Would any other councillor like to make a report to the council meeting? I'd just like to follow on from that. I'm so pleased to go to that event year on year and to say that we've been able to host that event in a number of our towns across the Shire. It's great to see the presence of the rainbow flags in places like the tourist park in Chiltern, and to fly that, to raise that flag in the heart of a small town, to really say, to demonstrate visibility, and to remember what Ida Hobbit Day is about. It's about it's a day that recognises the day that homosexuality was removed from the International Classification of Diseases in 1990. Anytime I read that statement, I think, what? Okay, sure. I was only born 2 years later. I would like that to be in the much more distant history, well before. So I think it really shows for us that the importance of marking that occasion each year. And the theme for this year, which I think is particularly pertinent to local government, is at the heart of democracy. And it reminds us all that equality is fundamental to a democratic society, and reminds us again that we cannot call ourselves inclusive if some people are made to feel unsafe, unheard, or unwelcome because of who they are or who they love. So thank you to particularly Kate O'Toole and the staff that put that event on yesterday. But I don't think that Kate would mind sharing the spotlight or being outshone by Samara Bright and Jodie Lynn Saunders, because they were fantastic. Great representatives from Beechworth High who shared fantastic stories, but even better, great music. We have some fantastic music that we always get the benefit of from Beechworth High School, and they've been an amazing supporter of that event year on year. So what an easy way for us to demonstrate our commitment to a day like that, and I think we did exactly that in Chiltern. And I was pleased to see we even had someone stop in after a drive-by. We even had someone stop and say, what the hell, there's rainbow flags in the tourist park in Chiltern. I had to stop. So we made sure they got a rainbow cupcake with a sour strap on top and understood what we were doing, heard some great music, and away they went. So that's everything that we need to do to show our support in a very small way as we continue to progress strategies in a bigger way, and continue to show our commitment to inclusivity and diversity. So thank you to those staff. Any other councillor reports for the council meeting? If not, I'll go to the 16.2, the Mayor's Diary, which is there for information and lists the functions, events and meetings for April 2026. Item 17 is the Decisions Register, which is listed for information, a report outlining the actions from council resolutions as at the 28th of April 2026, including those not previously listed as completed, but not including resolutions to note a report. Item 18 is general business. Councillors, does anyone have any general business to raise with the council meeting tonight? No. Well, that brings us to the end of the council meeting. I declare the meeting closed at 8:30 p.m. The next council meeting is Tuesday, the 30th of June, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.